A life of fellowship.
Experience shows that most of a believer's problems are related to fellowship. If a believer has normal fellowship, his life will be normal. Hence, believers must have a good understanding of practicing fellowship. Fellowship is the contact between God and man. This, however, is a shallow definition.
Fellowship also includes the mutual contact among God's people. In a deeper sense, fellowship is a kind of mutual flow. The blending and flowing of two kinds of liquids is a mutual flow. In one sense, fellowship is a two-way contact, but in a deeper sense, it is a mutual flow.
Something flows into us from God, and something flows from us to God at the same time as God's people. Something flows mutually among us. This is what we call fellowship.
The Christian life is a life of fellowship. A believer cannot be independent, neither can he be individualistic. Being independent is toward God, and being individualistic is toward other believers. No believer should be separated from God and live an independent life.
Anyone who is separated from God and becomes independent from Him can no longer live a normal Christian life. A believer who is severed from God is a Christian in name only, but no longer a Christian in his practical living.
We may be a Christian in name and in position, and yet no longer be one in our practical living. Whether we live a Christian life in reality depends on whether we are living a life in fellowship with God or are independent from God.
Being independent from God means that we have broken our relationship with Him and have lost the mutual flow with Him. Thus, God is separate from us and we are separate from God. There is no flow joining us and God. We are separated from one another.
Man's eating of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in Genesis 3 was according to the principle of independence from God. The principle of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is that man lives and works apart from God.
Man lives without God, without needing God, without having God, without depending on God, and without contacting God. This is the principle of independence. The principle of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the principle of the tree of life is the opposite. Its principle is dependence.
In the universe, anything dead is independent and unrelated to other things, but anything living is dependent. As long as a tree is living, it relies on soil, and as long as a fish is living, it relies on water, but once they die, soil and water mean nothing. The tree is independent from the soil.
The tree of the knowledge of good and evil results in death. Therefore, its principle is independence. The tree of life results in man having life. Therefore, its principle is a continual dependence on God. The entire Christian living should be of life. There should not be any trace of death.
Nevertheless, whenever we are independent from God, we are living in death, not in life, regardless of whether we are working, studying, taking care of our family, or doing other things. As long as we do these things on our own, apart from God, we are cut off from fellowship with God. This is abnormal.
A normal Christian life is a life of fellowship. This means that we cannot be separated from God. We cannot be independent from God. From the day of our salvation, we no longer exist as individuals, and we should no longer be independent.
Christians are the most dependent people. Whenever a believer becomes independent, he is no longer a believer in his living. Christians are people who depend entirely on God. Without God, they do not have life. Without God, they cannot live. And without God, they will fall into death.
Even if we do something very proper, we will be dead if we are independent from God, because the principle of independence is death.
Our concept in God's salvation should not be morality or religion. It should be fellowship. We may be right in doing something, but we should ask whether it was done in fellowship. We must ask whether we did it independently from God or in fellowship with God.
Therefore, a life of fellowship means that we have fellowship with God, are connected to Him, and have a mutual flow with Him in everything. We should focus on not being separated from God.
Before a person is saved, he may be the most independent person on earth, but once this great and capable person is saved, he becomes a dependent person. Becoming a Christian, he is changed and can no longer decide things on his own or be independent.
He needs to contact and consult God related to every problem, and bring every matter to the Lord and to consider, examine, and determine things before Him. This believer is the best type of Christian.
In this respect, Christians need to be weak to the extent that he neither has own ideas, make own decisions, or take any action related to what they encounter without contacting the Lord and consulting with Him, allowing Him to make the decisions. This is the best and sweetest living of a Christian.
We need to realize every fallen man is very strong and independent. It is glorious for a Christian to be dependent. No normal Christian can be independent. We depend on another one, God, at every moment and in every matter.
If we desire to be a normal Christian, we must not be independent toward God and individualistic toward the brothers and sisters. We fellowship with God and with the brothers and sisters in all matters.
If we are like this, everything we do will be safe and secure. And it will definitely be full of light, peace, and sweetness when we are living in this way. We are living in fellowship, and this kind of life is called the life of fellowship.
In this life of fellowship, we must constantly see that we not only have God, but also have the brothers and sisters. One thing is certain: the more we open to the brothers and sisters, the better Christians we will be. Our entire Christian living should be one that depends on God and relies on the brother.